welcome to Cultivating Thriving Teenagers, Practical SEL Strategies for the Classroom. And let's hop in to what you came here for.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Ashley Starkey. I am a middle school special education teacher, and I've been studying brain and brain science for the past like 10 years. So I love SEL. I love everything to do with helping our teenagers and calm their nervous systems, get ready for the day ahead. So I am going to share my screen. All right, and I hope that you can all see the presentation, Cultivating Thriving Teenagers. And you're like, well, why are we not just talking about all kids? And what I've learned is that our brains go through two really big spurts of growth. And one happens when you're a 2-year-old, and the next one happens when you're a teenager. And so you gain all these synapses and all these connections within your brain. And so today I want you to learn how we can help those teenagers that are in our classroom. And when I'm talking about teenagers, I'm also talking about their chronological age, but what we'll discover is that sometimes you also have to think about their emotional age, and kids come to us with all sorts of backgrounds, and so their emotional age may be very different than their chronological age. So, social emotional learning is the teaching of non-academic skills. Those are those soft skills that are essential to success in school and life, or what might be called life skills, right? So, knowing how to build positive relationships, understand your feelings, manage those behaviors are some of the concepts that make up the core of social emotional learning. And they are critical for pre-teenagers and teenagers, and even those kids that we just can't reach because they need these skills to be part of our society. So according to Castle, and Castle is kind of the leader in social emotional, and they have a ton of different information on their website. And when you picked up that handout that I created for today, they are an additional resource. So please check out their website. They are amazing. So they have some benefits of teaching SEL both to students and the teacher. So for students, SEL leads to improved academic achievement. It contributes to the health and well-being and safe schools. So it can help buffer against any of those health risks. Sometimes we see, fights happening in our schools that these SEL tools can help mitigate against those incidences happening. SEL develops skills that promote future readiness, and it's consistently effective across demographic groups, social economic groups, and cultural backgrounds. Maybe some of us live in the urban setting or teach in the urban setting. Some of us might be in the suburban or rural communities. So both or all three different settings, SEL helps in those areas. It can also help within the United States or even if you're teaching overseas. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have limits on where it's going and who it can reach. We also, as people who work with youth, need to build some of these into our daily lives so that we can help the teenagers that are in our lives. But it's not one size fits all. And so what will be beneficial for maybe a couple kids in your setting might not be beneficial for all kids in your setting. So we have to consider our population and the audience that we're trying to reach. For the adults in the building, SEL can, go, it increases um, your satisfaction with your life and with your job. It can lessen your burnout. Focusing on SEL can build stronger bonds between the teachers and students, which can help manage classroom incidences. And teachers who focus on SEL report feeling more effective at their teaching and less anxiety. So here is kind of our roadmap for today. We're going to discuss the 5 key skills to successful SEL, examine strategies for each area, and then we will explore a classroom routine. So keys to success. So there are 5 keys to success. Self-awareness is understanding one's own emotions. It's your personal goals and your values. It is your awareness within the world. Your self-management is the next key to success. And this is the ability to regulate your own emotions and your behaviors. Then you have social awareness, and that's the ability to understand, empathize, and feel compassion for those with differences. And then relationship skills, the ability to establish and maintain healthy, rewarding relationships. And last but not least, responsible decision making. So learning to make constructive choices about behaviors and interactions. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each one of these areas, and I'm going to give you a couple of skills and a couple of resources for each one of these. So first we have self-awareness, and self-awareness is the understanding of one's own emotions, personal goals, your values. This includes assessing your strengths and your limitations, having positive mindsets, and possessing a well-grounded sense of self-advocacy. So some tools here are to label your feelings, to journal thoughts, and then to do check-ins. And I do this a few different ways in my classroom. One of my favorite ways is to use emotional wheels. And there's tons of different emotional wheels out on the internet, but I love these for our kids who have are able to like read these words, and we can dive deeper into what these words mean. And so we all grow up and we all know what angry and sad and bad and happy are. And thankfully to Inside Out and Inside Out 2, we're getting some more of these words and these definitions, but this helps us to break it down even further. So when we're angry, we're not just angry, right? We might be more frustrated than we are angry, but it leads into that. Or we might be more annoyed than we are angry. And so to give our kids these different words so that they can express their emotions better helps us know how we can help them, right? So I have a lot of kids that come in to me and they're tired, right? So they might be really sleepy. And so when they're tired, I know, hey, I'm not going to get to them, and I'm not going to be able to impart my wisdom onto them if they're not able to learn and if their brains aren't stimulated. So I've got to figure out a way how to stimulate their brain so that they're not tired anymore, but they're moving into this playful and content and proud and accepted part of their brain. Um, I I didn't put any of the other simpler emotional wheels in here, but I think that it's important to know your kids and to understand what level of emotion wheel can I actually use in my classroom. The next one are journal prompts. And what I do with journal prompts, I have some here. So, reflect on a time when you feel proud of yourself. Describe the emotions you experienced and why. Imagine how it feels to be in someone else's shoes. Write about a time when you showed empathy toward a friend or a classmate. And they have to learn what empathy means, right? Like we just can't say, oh, empathy, because some of our kids don't even know what the word empathy means. Then write about a goal you have for yourself and what steps can you take to achieve it and how will you stay motivated. Um, I do a lot of transition assessments with my kids because I am a special education teacher and it's part of their individualized education plan. I have to ask them what they want to do for their future. And so some of them say, YouTube, and I'm like, well, how are you going to be a YouTuber? And so we have to discuss those steps that they're going to take. So journal prompting. Some of my kids have a really hard time like reading and writing. And so journal prompts look different for those kids. And maybe it's just, hey, you know, draw me a time that you felt proud of yourself. And they love to draw. So that can encompass more than just those kids that can't read or write. It encompasses all my kids. And then I ask them to, label 5 things, and spelling doesn't count because it's not necessarily an assignment that needs to be graded. However, I could turn it, if I'm an English teacher, I could turn it into that writing prompt for the week or a writing prompt for the day and grade them, but that's not what this is meant to be in my classroom. Um, Additionally, like I ask the kids every day to come in and tell me something that's going well for them and tell me something that's not going well for them or that they wish that would change. And then tell me something that they're looking forward to. And when I do this, I'm just asking them to write it down, either on their laptops or on their piece of paper that's in front of them. Um, and I say at the end of those 5 minutes, I say you can either, join in and you can share with the rest of the class, or you don't have to. This is completely up to you. And some kids don't want to share, and some kids every single time they want to share. And that's perfectly fine because then we're using our listening skills to listen to other people and experience what other people who are different from us are experiencing. This is a check-in. So kind of like I was just discussing, tell me something that's good, something that's not going so well, and something that you're looking forward to. This is a different type of check-in. So what has gone well? What's something that you're grateful for? This is called a rosebud and thorn. So again, you can find this image on the internet. It's also in that packet that I put together. And then what's something that you're looking forward to, or what gives you hope and inspiration and motivation right now? And maybe it's them drawing these different things. And then the seed is how do you want to grow? And where are you working right now? What deserves more attention in the coming days? So again, this could be part of your language block, but it doesn't have to be. This is very regulating for our brain. So when we talk about a routine, what are the kids doing every day that when they come into our class? How are we starting class every day? And if we can make it that it's a routine for them, then that's planning for my brain. Then it's calming for my brain. And I know every time I enter Mrs. Starkey's classroom, I'm going to have to open up my iPad and and get out a piece of paper and do this check-in. Then they expect it and they know it. And when you're gone, because you have to have a sub or whatever, they know what to do because they are in that routine. Furthermore, they might complain about it. They might complain about it every single day. But when you don't do it, then they're like, well, what about that thing that we were doing at the beginning of every class? And I'm like, oh, right, we need to get back into that. Because sometimes we do fall out of our habits, but they are quick to say, I miss doing that. And so the kids that I work with, they definitely love this, even though they might complain about it all the time. Before I move on, are there any questions? Dr. Desiree, are there any questions in the chat or anything that anybody wants to share?
There's no questions at this time.
Okay, great. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. I am more than happy to answer any questions as we go along. The next part is self-management, right? So this is our ability to actually understand ourselves. It requires skills and attitudes that facilitate the ability to regulate one's own emotions and behaviors. It's knowing that when I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling mad or confused, then I need to go and do something. It includes the ability to delay gratification, manage your stress, control your impulses, and persevere through challenges. So for these tools, I have yoga and mindfulness linked in here. I have facilitating emotional regulation and setting goals. So, yoga with Adrienne. I found Miss Adrienne during COVID, and I still use her in my classroom. And she has some really easy yoga stretches. And what we do is like just trying to, use our hands to help us with breathing, and because we're on our devices all the time, so we need to stretch our hands and to move them in different ways rather than just in the typing form or in the texting form. So Miss Adrienne, Miss Adrienne has a lot of different stretches that we can use in our classrooms that allow us to take some time to just settle ourselves and settle into the day. The Calm app, I've been using the Calm app for about the past 10 years. And the cool thing with the Calm app is that they have free educator like logins. If you use your email from your corporation, then you have a free account with them. And it has yoga and meditations from elementary school age all the way up into high school. They also have some by Kobe Bryant for those sports enthusiasts that are in our classroom. And so I really do enjoy doing mindfulness and the Calm app in my classroom. The one warning that I'll give you is that sometimes our brains just can't sit still for the amount of time that it takes to do this mindfulness, because we're asking our kids to stop everything that they're doing, to focus themselves back into a place that they don't usually go to look at their emotions and to kind of think about where their brains and bodies have been and where they're going. And I don't know about you, but for me, this can be very challenging because I'm like, go, go, go all the time. And so we have to make sure that we are giving our kids bits and pieces at a time. So maybe it's just starting with 3 minutes. Like, can my class do 3 minutes of mindfulness? Can we slow our brains down for just 3 minutes? And then can we build up to the 5 minutes? Can we build up to the 7 minutes and the 10 minutes and the 15 minutes? Because I can tell you that your kids are going to start like roam, their eyes are going to start looking around, their bodies are going to start wiggling. And so we have to kind of build it into the classroom as a challenge if we're going to do mindfulness in the classroom. This website, and this is from confidentcounselors.com. This website gives us a lot of different mindfulness activities geared towards those middle school folks, right? So those kids with their chronological age of 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they have a lot of different mindfulness activities on their website. So I did put that in the handout as well. And then facilitating emotional regulation. So role-playing situations using problem-solving approach. What's the problem and how do I feel about it? What can I do about it? What would happen if I did this? And am I doing what I decided to do? And then how did it turn out? So I like to do these as like maybe also an opener sometimes, or just a classroom discussion at the end of class. You know, I might have 3 to 5 minutes and I'm like, hey, so if somebody was to be running down the hallway, or if somebody was to be tapping their foot too loudly, what is something that I could do about that? Or how would I feel about that when I saw somebody running down the hallway? Or if somebody didn't listen when I asked them to stop tapping their foot, how would I feel? And then what could I do or what could I say? And so at the end of class, we might have just a quick discussion about these. And what I try to do is think about things that come up in the classroom on a regular basis, and tapping the foot, or somebody else being on their iPad when they shouldn't be, tends to be something that my kids struggle with. And so what I do is jot down those things that make other people frustrated or anxious in the classroom, so that when I have those 5 minutes at the end of class and I don't know what to do, and I'm like, well, it's too late to start something new, then I can pull out one of these scenarios and be like, hey, so what could we do in this situation? And then point back to it later in the day, or in the week, or in the month. Goal setting. So Act for Youth is a new website that I most recently found, but they have a lot of goal setting activities and worksheets on their website. They have other links and activities that they have too. So I would highly suggest looking into Act for Youth. And so we need to understand what goal setting looks like. So we're modeling what goal setting looks like. We're making that plan. We're making smart goal, um, you know, smart goals with our kids. And we're letting our teens lead the way. I have one student who always wants an A, always wants an A. And if he doesn't get an A, then he gets frustrated. And I asked him what his goal was for this year. And he said, I want to get a B in language arts. And I was like, oh, great. Because I never, in my wildest dreams, would have ever thought that he wanted to get a B. Because he always wants an A. And so now that he's voiced, I want a B, I have that up in my room because he doesn't always get an A. And so if his goal is a B, I can be like, hey, remember you set this goal, you want a B. And we can celebrate that we're moving towards the B and we don't have to have an A. And that's going to be part of our conversation throughout the year. Any other questions before I move into the third, or any aha moments?
We do have a comment and we do have a question. The comment says, I love the Calm app. During the pandemic, they offered free lifetime membership to teachers. I've seen them offer it again from time to time. And then the question says, what does yoga look like in a school setting, logistics wise?
Yeah, so great question. So yoga can look very different. So for my classroom, I have anywhere between 8 and 15 kids, and I know that that's going to blow your brain. But yoga in my classroom has always, because I haven't been willing to pull out the yoga mats that I've bought, but has always looked like chair yoga. And Yoga with Adriene has chair yoga. And it also just has hand yoga. So I'm just like moving my hands in different directions, but I'm moving my hands in an intentional way and I'm concentrating on my breathing, right? So I'm kind of doing that mindfulness piece, but I'm doing activities along with it. I hope that answers your question. I do have yoga mats, but I have not decided yet in the 5 years that I've had them to pull them out because I don't know how comfortable everybody would be with me pulling out a yoga mat and doing, upward dog or downward dog, sorry, downward dog, um, and child's pose and all these different things. And so yoga can look very different in the classroom. And if you have 30 students, I just suggest that you start with that hand yoga, that you start with just that deep breathing, but you're also doing something with it. Because, like I said, those kids need movement. They can't sit still because we have stuff coming at us all the time. So, yeah. Sorry. So, hmm, social awareness. Social awareness, right? So, social being with other people. Social awareness involves the ability to understand, empathize, and feel compassion for those with different backgrounds or cultures. It also involves understanding social norms for behavior and recognizing family, school, and community resources and supports. So some of the tools are active listening guidelines, setting expectation, and then read alouds. So active listening guidelines. We have to teach our kids and our teens how to listen actively. We have to define what empathize means. We have to break it down into the steps. And you're like, but Ashley, like my kids are teenagers. They're like 14 years old. And I'm like, yep. And they've had COVID, right? So when we think about 14-year-olds, we're in 2024, in 2020, and 2021, think about where they were. Think about, they were fourth graders, third graders, and they weren't in school, probably. I'm making that broad assumption that, they probably weren't in school. They might not have had these concepts taught to them before they came to be teens. And so you can teach them, you can empower them to empathize with others, to be attentive when others are talking, to show understanding and reflect back. And you can do this by doing it when they're sharing what they're struggling with, right? So if we go back and we're like asking them to journal, we can empathize and be attentive and teach these listening guidelines and active listening skills along with other people sharing their journal prompts. So I think it's important to not just say, okay, well, today we're going to work on active listening. And what is active listening? But we can build it into part of our routines. Um, don't interrupt or offer advice or give suggestions. That's probably my hardest thing, right? So somebody's like, oh my gosh, I have this student who talks all the time. And I'm like, oh, me too. And so I just need to be able to understand and reflect back to them after they've shared with me what their struggles are. And then say, hey, I know that you're struggling with it. Do you want me to offer any advice, or do you want me to give you any suggestions about what I've done? Or do you just want me to be there to listen? And offering that question, that kind of um, ability to allow them to come back to you and say, no, but I just wanted you to listen, or yes, I want you to give me some suggestions, that goes a long way with the people that we work with or the kids that we work with. And then asking open-ended questions like, that seemed really tough. Like, is there anything that you've done to help the student learn that they can't be talking all the time? And maybe it helps them to think about the situation in a different way. Setting expectations. I love this rights. I love anything that we can kind of define in a in a word sense. So to respond, to inform others about your own opinion, to have your own personal goals and needs, to have feelings and express them, to have trouble and make mistakes and be forgiven, to select or choose whether you'll meet another's expectations, and to not achieve your rights by violating the rights of others. So when we can empower our students by setting expectations for them, then they can be more successful in the classroom. Read alouds. So I have a love-hate relationship with it, and I love that Dr. Desiree is going to have another presentation with read alouds because I love read alouds in the classroom, but I think my fear with read alouds has always been like, well, my kids are going to think that it's babyish. And so I started read alouds this year with all my kids, and I do it, and I literally brought Milk Goes to School as one of my um, books this year. And it's an elementary book. And you're like, I don't know that I can bring an elementary book to my classroom. This one has a lot of puns and stuff in it, and it was awesome. But I love using picture books in the classroom to help with SEL because you're like, well, Milk couldn't find a friend. Or I love this one too. I brought two of my favorite, and I get them from the library because picture books are super expensive. But this is What If, right? And it just has beautiful, beautiful pictures in it. So then I have a prompt after this. And I just ask kids to basically write down something that they learned, something that they're going to take away. I have started to ask them to rate the book so they can rate it with stars or with thumbs up or with um, hearts. That was the other one. And what my hope is that they will be able to find some additional books. And I have kids that really just can't read. But I think that it also gives us a way to, um, in the language arts or in the special education classrooms, it gives us a way to have a text that is not very long. And we talk about the words that they don't know, and we define the words that they don't know. And it offers us an opportunity to have a discussion, to use our empathy and our listening skills. It helps us to do all those things, but the book is like 10 minutes long, right? It's not, you can also do it with passages too, right? Like finding them on ReadWorks or another site that offers some really good printable resources. But I think that picture books allows our brains to imagine different things and it allows us to go places that maybe we would have never gone before. So I started this school year teaching them about the Olympics because guess what? Many of my kids didn't know what the Olympics were. And so I brought in a lot of picture books about the Olympics. And my plan is to then bring a lot of picture books in November about veterans and wars and they don't have to be long. They can be short. I have this read aloud in here, Jabari Jumps. And I also, on these websites, websites, the Read Aloud Library and the Secondary English Coffee Shop, they offer a lot of questions that can go along with different picture books. And so I suggest you check them out and just use their suggestions for either writing prompts or a discussion afterwards. And so Jabari jumps begin and the overview is that Jabari begins the day looking forward to jumping off the diving board for his first time, but realizes he might feel a little scared and uncertain about jumping. His dad lets him know that it's okay to feel scared, and that sometimes when dad feels scared, he takes a deep breath and it feels less scary and more like a surprise. Jabari climbs back to the top of the diving board, thinks about how he likes surprises, and then jumps. And so, like questions that go along with it. Have you ever tried something that scared you? What did it feel like before? And how did you overcome that experience? So this is a great social emotional learning picture book. And then I love this. I Am Enough. So the book reads like a typical poem. So if you're studying poetry, find poem books that you can read in the classroom. And it shows a young girl giving herself affirmations, and we all need affirmations throughout our day. So I love picture books for many different reasons, and these are, a few that I've picked out. And I think that it's important to find picture books that are diverse. And thankfully, we have people that we can follow. I put a couple names in who I'm following list because they have picture book um, lists that we can go back to, and we don't have to think about the lists. That's the cool thing about all these people that are doing the work for us. We don't have to do the work. We can enjoy the work that they've done. And so I put some names in that who I'm following list that really do have some great picture book ideas. Instagram's my favorite tool right now. So please check that out. Relationship skills. So we've talked about three different. We have, I think, two left. So relationship skills. This is the ability to establish and maintain and restore healthy and supportive relationships, to effectively navigate settings with differing social and cultural demands and opportunities among individuals and diverse groups. This includes the capacity to use restorative practices, to reflect on the impact of their words and actions, and to repair and heal relationships with others. So when we break relationships, either with ourselves and the kids that we work with, or ourselves and the other staff that we work with, we have to learn ways to come back to the same table because we are in this journey together. And even if it's just for a year, we're in the journey together and we need to have our team with us. So, relationship skills, our tools are social communication skills, encouraging to others, and positive communication skills. So, listening, build those listening skills. Being able to hear what people really are saying is a validating communication skill. We all want to be heard. We all want to have our voice be heard. And so if we can practice our active listening skills, that allows us to hear not only the words that people are saying, but also the emotions that they're reflecting through their nonverbal behavior. Both are important in understanding the whole message that's being communicated. And I started zones of regulation with my kids this week, and we were talking about how our faces might look different depending on our emotion. And so I think that it's important for our kids to understand nonverbal behavior too. This complex skill can be practiced. So one activity that I found focuses on the practice of concentration and listening to the verbal messages with undivided attention. So you can practice the activity with a group of teens. First, ask all participants to sit in a circle, and the first person starts by telling a story, whatever he or she wants. And then after 3 to 5 sentences, you say stop and randomly choose another participant to continue. And this person now has to repeat the last sentence that was said and then continue making up the story. And if they can't correctly repeat the last sentence after 5 seconds, then they're disqualified. How many of our students would be able to do that? The game continues with the same rules, and the winner is the last person remaining after everyone else is disqualified. So this is a competitive version of the game. However, you could also make it your own version without disqualification or adding new elements that you find useful. And then have a discussion afterwards. Ask them to reflect on the game and when and how was their attention distracted and what helped them concentrate after they were distracted. And I think that our kids would have a really hard time with that, right? Because they have a hard time listening to all the directions that are given to them. But how could we make it a challenge for them? Could we say, well, this time you didn't remember the last sentence, but maybe next time you'll remember. And so giving them some encouragement. So encourage it, model it. Wait before your turn, before you speak. And when you speak, acknowledge others' points of view. So I see what you're looking at. And I can understand your point of view, and that makes sense. But I have a different perspective, and can I offer it to you? So treat others' feelings with curiosity and validation, not frustration or judgment. Celebrating it. Notice when someone else made others feel included and valued. Oh, I see that you asked Bob to come over and work with us. Or I see that you asked Jocelyn if she had a partner today and that was nice of you to include her. And enable it. So create opportunities to help everyone feel equal. For example, by giving young family members responsibilities or young kids that are in the classroom, the possibilities and giving them the possibilities to help you in the classroom, right? So how many times are we like, I know that there's something in my mailbox and I need to go get it, but how many of your kids need a movement break and need to move around the school, and maybe they can go check your mailbox. Maybe you trust them enough. Or for me, sometimes it's like, oh, I need to send this to the person who shreds all the information, and it's not like confidential or anything, or maybe I put it in an envelope and have them deliver it. Excuse me. Um, and so I allow them to have that movement break while they are in my classroom because they don't always get the movement breaks. And now in my school, we're on a block schedule. So we have 90-minute periods. So I think that it's important to encourage them to understand what they need when they need it. And yes, Can they miss 5 minutes of instruction? Can they miss 5 minutes of silent work time or independent work time? For sure, because either they're going to get it done in your classroom or they're going to be a disruption in your classroom. So how can you encourage movement in those kids that just can't sit still? All right. And then I have positive communication. Um, I want us to think about how we communicate with the children that are in our care. And sometimes I catch myself and I have said something or done something that maybe I'm not okay with. The other day I had to step out for a few minutes and they were pretty rowdy when I was in the hallway. And I came in and I was like, what the heck are you guys doing in here? And so then I had to go back and I had to apologize that I was frustrated and that I shouldn't have done or approached the situation in that way. And so when we apologize, we show our kids that they can apologize too and what apology looks like. But positive communication, how are we communicating with the kids that are in our care? How are we communicating with the teacher next door or that teacher that just drives us up the wall or that staff member that we just can't be around? And so, how can we change that positive communication? And so one of the ways that I've started to do this in my classroom is to write notes. I write notes to my kids, I write notes to their families, and I write notes to others in the building. And I have to say that I have bought lunch note cards, and I just sometimes drop it in their classroom or send a student, right? Movement. I can send a student to go deliver, hey, can you go deliver this card to so and so? And they're happy to go do that because they get out of class for 5 minutes. Or can can they run this stack of cards that need to be sent home to families? Can they take it up to the front office for you? And so I'm trying to reach all my students. And I'm sure I don't have as many students as you do in your care, but I have 20 students or 25 students that I see on a regular basis. And so I'm trying to reach all of them by Thanksgiving. And then I'll try and reach all of them again after we come back from Christmas break. And I'm just trying to write a simple note to them. Um, I'm sure that if you asked parents to drop off note cards, you know what? When I started this many years ago, my grandma used to get cards in the mail from organizations that she had donated to. And so I took those cards and I just started using those cards because she's not going to use them. And so, how can I find a cheap and inexpensive way to write the note? And I mean, write the note because I also text home positive things, but writing that note home, then the kids see it. And they came in this week and some of them were like, oh, I saw that note that you sent my mom. And I was like, oh, really? And so it does make an impact on the kids too, because it's positive. It's positive communication. Before I move on to the last one, is there any other questions or comments that I should be aware of?
Not at this time.
Okay. So the last thing that I want to touch on today is responsible decision making. And this is really important for our kids, those teenagers, because your prefrontal cortex, your planning, your reasoning part of your brain doesn't fully form until 30 years old. Well, they used to say 25, but now people are saying 30. And so If you're not able to reason, if you're not able to plan, and if you're not able to make those reasonable decisions and your prefrontal cortex isn't working, then we need to figure out ways that we can make those responsible decisions now, because we don't want them to be 18 and going to jail, right? We want them to be a productive member of society. So, responsible decision making is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. The realistic evaluation of consequences of various actions and consideration of the well-being of oneself and others. So our tools in this part are decision-making framework, letting students get stuck and then unstuck, and then teaching critical thinking. So the first thing that I have for us is using a problem-solved paradigm called SOTAs. And SOTA stands for situation, options, disadvantages, advantages, and selecting the best option. So you brainstorm different ways to solve a problem, identify the disadvantages and the advantages of each option, and then select the best option to implement and to see how it works. So for S, that's the situation. What's the problem? Be as specific as you can. Who's upset with who and why? And what's the problem that's going on? Who's involved? And how is this problem affecting you? And then the O is for options. Brainstorming 2 or 3 different options. There's no such thing as a bad option. And so we don't want to say, oh, well, that's not going to work or that's not going to work. We want more options than not. So think about 2 or 3 different options. And then every option, allow them to come up with a disadvantage and an advantage. And then make sure that there's at least one disadvantage and one advantage for each option. Finally, after you've brainstormed several options and thought about the advantages and disadvantages of each, select the option that you think is best. So, there's no perfect answer. We're always not going to make the same decision, but we need to have options. Finally, I think that you could also bring this into your literary circles or your language arts classes. Think about a character. What options did they have? What are the disadvantages and advantages to each option? What was the problem? So kind of tying it back, maybe it's a pretend thing that you've noticed, but that you just want them to come in and talk about the options and the disadvantages and the advantages. The next one, this is one of my favorite things. I love to do would you rather. It allows us to have those listening skills. It allows us to have fun while we're playing a game. Again, those 5 minutes before class ends that you're like, what do I do? Pull out would you rather questions. Would you rather have cats or would you rather have dogs? And then pull out 1 or 2 people and say, well, why would you rather have cats or why would you rather have dogs? One of the things I do in my classroom to get movement is just to have them cross over to one side of the classroom or the other side of the classroom. So like if you want dogs, go over to the left side of the classroom. If you want cats, go over to the right side of the classroom. You could also, if you have large classes, you could also just say, hey, stand up if you would rather have cats. Sit down if you would rather have dogs. maybe have them sit on top of their desks. What a fun way to just build those in. And there's tons of would you rather questions online. I don't think that I put any would you rather questions in the packet, but you can always message me. I have my email on the last slide. You can always message me, and I have tons of options. So if you need any tools, please, please, please reach out. I'm happy to help. Decision-making games. So we all love things to be gamified. So how can we make some good suggestions? And so this is the one thing that I found probably before COVID, but common sense media. So I use this in my personal life and my education life, but they have some great tools, some great lesson plans, and they have a whole list of decision-making games. So please look at those games. Think about which ones might fit into your classroom. I don't have a tie into math or language arts for this one, but it definitely could be tied into social studies or science, and see what you can come up with. Your brains are just as smart, if not smarter than mine. So, um, last one, real life conversations. So I have a student who, um, I wrote it down because I have a hard time telling real life stories sometimes. But recently I had a student, and we'll call him Brian, who was very upset with another student because they were being called a midget. And this other student, Ralph, just hates being called a midget. His last name is Small, and he's really petite. And so earlier in the day, Ryan was called a retard, and that's not okay either. But he got really upset about it, and he got really frustrated with the person who was naming him names. But then he also was calling other people names. And so I pulled him out into the hall and I said, "Hey, how did you feel earlier in the day when this happened to you?" And he was like, "I was really mad and really frustrated." And I said, "Yeah, and you probably didn't handle it the best, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. I didn't." And I said, "Well, when you were saying that he was a midget, how do you think he was feeling?" And so that really brought it home to him. And we can have these real life conversations with our kiddos. One of the things that I try to do is be out in the hall, so that I can meet my students before they come in, so that I know what their attitude is before they come into my classroom. And then I know how my day is going to go, or if I need to change anything for that period, right? And it's okay to meet students where they are. I got really down on myself the other day because I wasn't getting all my standards met for the day, and I didn't get everything done that I had planned. And I was like, wait, but you met the students where they were. You offered them time to calm their brains because they weren't calm. And so sometimes we just have to meet our students where they are to give them the calmness that they're not getting other places. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's okay. Well, I hope, I know I ended early. I am so sorry. But I hope that you got something new out of this. Please reach out. I'm on Instagram, and my email is there as well. So please reach out with any questions. If you need any resources, I am full of resources, and I could have gone on for days, but I know that we all have things that we need to do. So I do appreciate everybody's time today. Dr. Desiree, are there any last housekeeping things?
No, there's no housekeeping things. I asked for any questions in the chat, so we'll see if anyone has any questions. But I just want to thank you for the very practical information. I love when presenters give us kind of the theory behind it, but also spend a bulk of the time on practical things that I can actually take today and use on Monday. So I greatly, greatly appreciate, and I like that they were very varied, um, types of things that you can use. So I just greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Most definitely. I'll keep this on for just about a couple more minutes in case you want to take a picture of it. Again, my information is also in that that resource that Dr. Desiree has given you guys. She put it in the chat again. And then I did see that Tara did say temperature check for sure. I do this in a couple of different ways. I have I have up on my board kind of like the colors of the zones of regulation. And sometimes I just ask kids to go put a sticky note. What color are they feeling today? And you kind of have to teach them the colors because the colors in zones are different than the colors in Inside Out. But you could also just use the characters from Inside Out and what character do you most identify with? And they don't have to put their name on it, or you could have them put their name on it. And then you could see, oh, wait, I need to check in with this one particular student today. Or most of my classroom is in the calm and content and joy. And so you can also just say, we're good to go. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that tip, Tara. There's also other ways on Instagram and Facebook that you can figure out temperature checks. And yep, just please reach out if you need anything. I am happy to give you all the stuff that I have and share because I think that we don't need to be recreating the wheel all the time. So thank you everyone for your engagement today and for coming.
Thank you again, Ashley.
Most definitely.